I used to believe that my life was pretty solid. I was married to a woman named Sarah for over 6 years, and we had built our lives together in a cozy little house in Austin. On the surface, everything seemed fine. We had our routines. I worked as a graphic designer, while she had taken up a part-time job at a local yoga studio. But lately, I noticed some cracks in the facade. At first, it was subtle. A shift in her tone, a lingering smile when she answered her phone, and her sudden obsession with yoga. I mean, she had always been into fitness, but this was different. She started talking about her instructor, Jack, a lot. "He's so inspiring," she'd say, her eyes lighting up like I hadn't seen in years. I brushed it off, thought maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, who wouldn't be thrilled about getting fit and finding a new passion? But then came the late nights. "I'm working on my certification," she'd say, as she grabbed her gym bag and rushed out the door. The first few times I didn't think twice, but it became a pattern, something gnawed at me. One evening she came home smelling of sandalwood and coconut, and I knew that scent wasn't from any yoga mat. It was intoxicating, yet it made my stomach churn. I told myself I needed solid proof before jumping to conclusions. So I began to watch closely, subtly of course. I noticed how she would keep her phone locked at all times, and how she would turn it face down whenever I was around. The little things that seemed innocent at first started to pile up: her sudden interest in new clothes and the way she would spend hours in front of the mirror. It felt like she was prepping for someone else, and I was just a bystander in my own life. The breaking point came one Friday night. I was finishing up some work when I heard her phone buzz from across the room. I glanced over and saw a message pop up: "Can't wait to see you in class." It was from Jack. My heart sank. I felt a cold wave wash over me, and everything around me faded to a blur. That was it. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I decided to confront her. When she got home, I was waiting. You know that feeling when your stomach drops as you brace for a storm? That was me, ready to unleash a tempest of hurt and betrayal. As she walked through the door, I took a deep breath and asked, "Who is Jack?" Her reaction was immediate. She froze, eyes wide, and for a second I almost believed I'd misread everything. But then it turned to defensiveness. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, her voice dripping with irritation. I laid it all out: her late nights, the scent of someone else on her, and the message I saw. But instead of confessing, she launched into a tirade of lies. "He's just my yoga instructor. You're being ridiculous. You always think the worst of me." It felt like a punch in the gut. The woman I loved was standing there, denying a truth that was so glaringly obvious. My anger flared, and I fought back tears. "You're lying, Sarah. Just admit it." She rolled her eyes and then shifted the blame, claiming I was the one who neglected her and pushed her away. "You spend all your time working," she said, as if that justified her actions. It was infuriating, her deflection only deepening the wound. As I processed everything she said, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger mixed with disappointment. I had trusted her completely. This was not just a betrayal of our marriage, it felt like a betrayal of everything we had built together. After the confrontation, I was left reeling. I didn't know how to process the avalanche of feelings crashing over me. There was anguish, confusion, and a hollow sadness that wrapped around my chest like a vice. It was a strange cocktail of emotions that I had never experienced before. I felt like a ghost in my own life, wandering through memories that now seemed tainted. As the days went by, I found myself wrestling with the decision of what to do next. Should I fight for my marriage or cut my losses? I didn't have the slightest idea where to start. What I did know was that I had to make a choice, and I wanted it to come from a place of strength, not weakness. I needed to reclaim my sense of self, to become the person I had lost in this relationship. I didn't want to be a victim. I wanted to rise above this betrayal. The journey ahead looked daunting, but somehow, deep down, I felt a flicker of determination. I wanted to become mentally and physically stronger. Stay tuned for the next part of my story. In the wake of the confrontation, I found myself in a state of limbo. Sarah had retreated into her world of yoga, and I was left to grapple with my thoughts alone. The house felt larger, emptier. Every corner reminded me of our happier times together, and each memory was now tainted by the betrayal that loomed over us. I spent nights lying awake, my mind racing through the myriad of emotions. I felt anger, sadness, and even a tinge of guilt, which only fueled my internal conflict. I started asking myself all those what-if questions. What if I had paid more attention? What if I had communicated better? But as much as I wrestled with these thoughts, I knew deep down that Sarah's actions were her own, and I couldn't take the blame for her choices. I realized I needed to do something drastic to regain control over my life. After a few days of wallowing, I signed up for that gym across the street. Initially, it was just a way to channel my frustrations, but it quickly became more than that. The moment I stepped onto the treadmill and pushed myself to run, I felt a rush of endorphins that had been missing for far too long. It felt liberating. I was sweating out the anger, the hurt, and everything that had been weighing me down. In the gym, I met a few new people, and their energy was infectious. They were supportive and encouraged me to join group classes. I found myself in a spin class one afternoon, drenched in sweat but smiling for the first time in weeks. The instructor was a fiery woman named Mia, who had this way of pushing everyone to their limits. I felt a strange sense of camaraderie with the other participants, and for the first time, I felt like I was part of something again. As the weeks passed, I began to see physical changes in myself. I was losing weight, gaining strength, and more importantly, building confidence. This newfound strength gave me clarity. I started to think about my future, about what I wanted in life beyond Sarah and our shattered dreams. I began to visualize a life where I didn't feel tethered to betrayal, one where I could thrive. But even as I was finding my footing, I was also haunted by thoughts of Sarah and Jack. I couldn't just turn a blind eye to the reality of the situation. I began to do some digging. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover, that Sarah's affair was not just a fleeting fling but something deeper. It was like a puzzle that I needed to solve, and every piece I found only complicated the picture further. One afternoon, after an intense workout, I returned home to find Sarah's phone sitting on the kitchen counter. She had left it unlocked. My heart raced as I debated whether or not to look. I knew it was wrong to invade her privacy, but I felt compelled. I grabbed her phone and began scrolling through her messages. What I found made my stomach turn. There were texts between her and Jack that were far more explicit than I had anticipated. They discussed their intense connection, shared plans for what they described as their future, and exchanged photos that left little to the imagination. My heart pounded as I read through the messages, each one striking a chord of betrayal that echoed painfully in my chest. It was clear this wasn't just a physical affair. It had emotional consequences that reached into the depths of our marriage. At that moment, I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. I couldn't waste any more time with someone who had so little regard for our relationship. I had been fighting for a love that no longer existed for her. I realized I was done being the victim in this story. With a newfound resolve, I decided it was time to execute a plan. I would confront Sarah again, but this time, I wouldn't just lay out accusations. I would take control of the narrative. I wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine, a way to show her that I wasn't the weak husband she had expected. I started to prepare myself mentally. I began writing down my feelings, my thoughts, and the evidence I had found. I was determined to approach this conversation with the strength I had been cultivating. I wanted her to see that I had transformed, that I could stand on my own 2 feet without her. The next morning I was ready. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, and I knew I wouldn't allow her to deflect or lie her way out of this. I was prepared for anything she might throw at me. As she came down the stairs, I could feel the tension in the air. I had already decided that this would be the last time I would fight for this marriage. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. I could see the surprise in her eyes, quickly masked by a defensive posture. "What's wrong?" "I'm busy," she replied, her tone dismissive. "Not busy enough to avoid this conversation. I found your messages. I know about Jack," I stated, watching her expression morph from confusion to anger. "What are you talking about? You're twisting things again." She snapped, but I wasn't going to let her deflect. I laid out everything, the texts, the lies, her betrayal. I watched as she shifted from anger to panic. "It's not what you think," she yelled, but I cut her off. "You're right, it's worse. This isn't just a fling for you, it's a whole relationship. You've been lying to me for months." Her eyes widened, and I could see the realization hit her that her defenses were crumbling. "You had no right to go through my phone," she shouted, but even as she said it, I knew she was grasping at straws. "Maybe I wouldn't have if you had been honest with me, but here we are. You've made your choice, and I'm done being a consolation prize." In that moment, I felt a wave of liberation wash over me. I wasn't just confronting her, I was reclaiming my own strength, my own identity. I no longer felt like a victim. I was ready to stand up for myself, and it felt empowering. As the conversation continued, I could see her unraveling. The facade of innocence was fading, and reality was setting in. I was no longer the husband who would accept her excuses and lies. I was done with that version of myself. It was clear that the next step in this journey was going to be life-changing. I was ready to embrace the unknown, to step into a new chapter where I could prioritize my own well-being. I had no idea what the future held, but I was determined to face it head-on, with strength and resilience. And so, the next stage of my journey began. After that confrontation, the atmosphere in the house was thick with tension. I had thrown down the gauntlet, and Sarah was left scrambling to pick up the pieces of her shattered facade. I expected her to fight back, to try to manipulate the narrative, but instead, she seemed strangely quiet. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe this could be the catalyst I needed to finally move on. In the days that followed, Sarah attempted to act as if nothing had happened, but it was painfully clear that our marriage had become a battlefield. She would avoid me, burying herself in her yoga classes and late-night study sessions. I, on the other hand, poured myself into the gym, becoming a regular fixture in the weight room and group classes. With each rep and every drop of sweat, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was morphing into someone stronger both physically and mentally, and it felt good. One evening, after a particularly grueling workout session, I decided to grab a smoothie at a nearby cafe. I walked in, still energized from the endorphins coursing through my veins, and that's when I ran into Mia, the spin instructor who had been instrumental in my transformation. She was sitting at a table, her hair pulled back, a look of determination in her gaze. "Hey," she called out, waving me over. "You've been crushing it at the gym. I can see you're making serious progress." I felt a rush of pride at her compliment. "Thanks, it's been a wild few weeks, but I needed a change, you know." "Yeah, I get that. Sometimes life throws us curveballs like a bad relationship," she said, her voice casual but her eyes serious. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. She had no idea what I'd been through, but it felt refreshing to talk to someone who understood that life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. We ended up chatting for a while, and there was an easy chemistry between us. Mia had this way of making me feel seen and heard, something I hadn't felt in a long time. We shared laughs, talked about fitness goals, and even exchanged a few light-hearted jabs. As we wrapped up our conversation, she suggested we join a hiking group together. "Consider it a way to celebrate your progress. Plus, it'll be fun," she said, and I couldn't help but smile at the idea. It felt good to think about something other than Sarah for a change. The next day, I decided to take her up on the offer. I had no expectations, just a desire to embrace life again. Mia and I met up with the group at a local trailhead early Saturday morning. The group was diverse, all ages and backgrounds, but everyone shared a common enthusiasm for the outdoors. As we hiked, I felt a sense of freedom that had been absent for far too long. Mia stayed close, and we spent the hike talking and joking. She encouraged me to push myself, to tackle some of the steeper parts of the trail. As we reached a scenic overlook, I found myself smiling genuinely, taking in the view, and realizing how far I had come in such a short time. I felt alive. As the weeks passed, my bond with Mia grew stronger. We started to hang out more outside of the hiking group, grabbing smoothies and hitting the gym together. I found myself laughing more, feeling lighter, and starting to shed the layers of hurt and betrayal Sarah had wrapped around me. It wasn't that I wanted to jump into another relationship. It was more about rediscovering who I was without Sarah. But then came the inevitable moment of reckoning. One evening, Sarah cornered me while I was packing my gym bag for another hike with Mia. "Are you seeing someone else?" she asked, her voice sharp with accusation. I paused, taken aback. "What? No, I'm just working on myself, Sarah." "Working on yourself or working on getting over me? Because I see you with her all the time," she retorted, her eyes narrowing. I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm not here to discuss my life with you anymore. You made your choices and I'm moving on." I felt a rush of strength in those words. It wasn't about revenge or spite. It was about empowerment, reclaiming my story. Her face twisted in frustration and she started to cry. "You don't understand. I made mistakes, but I want to fix this." I shook my head, feeling the final threads of our relationship unraveling. "You had your chance, Sarah. You chose to betray me. I don't see a way back from that." She collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're throwing away everything we built." "No," I said firmly. "You did that when you made the decision to cheat. I'm done being the person who waits for someone who doesn't respect me. I have to think about my own happiness now." It was a brutal conversation, but deep down, I felt a sense of relief. I was finally articulating my truth, standing firm in my resolve to move forward. I was ready to embrace my new life, to let go of the shadow of betrayal and invest in the person I was becoming. Later that night, I met up with Mia again, and I found myself sharing the weight of what had just happened. I told her I'm done, that I'm choosing to focus on myself. I admitted, feeling a mixture of anxiety and relief wash over me. Mia smiled, her eyes bright with encouragement. "That's a big step. You deserve to be with someone who values you and your happiness. Just keep doing you, okay? The right things will fall into place." Her support felt like a warm blanket on a cold night, and I realized how important it was to surround myself with those who uplifted me. For the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine sense of hope for the future. The next morning, I woke up energized, ready to embrace whatever life had in store for me. I was on the path to becoming stronger, both inside and out, and I had no intention of stopping now. With each step I took, I felt the chains of my past begin to unravel. I was ready to rebuild, ready to move forward, and ready to choose myself above all else. I finally understood that sometimes the hardest part isn't just letting go of someone else. It's finding the strength to let go of the pain they caused. And I was determined to do just that. As the days turned into weeks, I found my footing. In this new life, the routine I had established at the gym began to feel less like a distraction and more like a foundation. I was committed to my self-improvement journey, and it was paying off. I was stronger physically, shedding the remnants of a relationship that had threatened to define me. More importantly, I was growing emotionally. Every day was an opportunity to rediscover who I was without Sarah. Despite the clarity I had gained, the whispers of doubt still lingered, especially when it came to my feelings for Mia. I didn't want to rush into anything, especially not a new relationship so soon after my marriage fell apart. But every time we hung out, I couldn't help but feel a spark between us. It was refreshing to be around someone who genuinely cared about my well-being and encouraged me to chase my goals. One Saturday, we decided to take a day trip to a nearby lake. It was a beautiful day, the kind where the sun sparkled on the water and laughter hung in the air like the scent of pine. As we settled down on a blanket, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in ages. Mia had brought along a picnic, and as we shared sandwiches and fruit, we talked about everything under the sun, our favorite workouts, childhood memories, and even our dreams for the future. I felt like I could be myself around her without any pretense. It was liberating. As the afternoon wore on, we decided to go for a swim. The water was refreshing, and we splashed around like kids, laughing and enjoying each other's company. It was in those moments that I began to let go of the past. I could feel the weight of Sarah's betrayal slipping away as I focused on the present. After swimming, we lay on the blanket, letting the sun warm our skin. Mia turned to me, her expression serious. "You know, I've watched you transform over the past few weeks. It's incredible. You've done the hard work and you should be proud of yourself." "Thanks, Mia. It hasn't been easy, but I feel like I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. I replied, looking into her eyes. I felt a connection deeper than mere friendship, and I knew that I had to address it. Mia, can I be honest with you? I said, my heart racing. I really enjoy spending time with you and I feel like there's something special between us, but I don't want to rush into anything. I just got out of a relationship and I need to be sure I'm ready. Her gaze softened and she smiled. I appreciate your honesty and I feel the same way. It's important to take things slow, especially after everything you've been through. Just know that I'm here for you, whatever you decide. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was a relief to share my feelings, and I knew I had made the right decision. I was ready to explore this new connection, but I was equally committed to ensuring I was emotionally prepared. As the summer days continued to pass, I found myself diving deeper into this journey of self-discovery. I took on new challenges at the gym, pushed myself to try different workout classes, and even started cooking healthier meals at home. My social circle expanded, and I was forming bonds with people who embraced my journey and supported my growth. But even amidst the positivity, I couldn't escape the lingering effects of Sarah's betrayal. There were moments when the memories would creep back in, like an unwelcome guest at a party. Sometimes, I'd see a couple holding hands or hear a song that reminded me of her, and a wave of sadness would wash over me. It was a testament to the complexity of healing. It wasn't linear, and I was learning to accept that. One evening, while I was out with a few friends from the gym, I received a text from Sarah. My heart sank as I opened it. "Can we talk? I need to explain myself," it read. I hesitated, my mind racing with thoughts of resentment and betrayal. Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, but another part of me felt an urge for closure. I decided to meet her at a local coffee shop, knowing I needed to approach it with an open mind. As I walked in, I spotted her at a corner table, looking smaller than I remembered. There was a sense of vulnerability in her demeanor that I hadn't seen before, and it caught me off guard. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice shaky. I nodded, trying to remain composed. "What did you want to talk about?" "I know I've hurt you deeply and I can't change what I did," she began, her eyes welling with tears. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since you confronted me. I'm so sorry for how I betrayed you. It was selfish and I didn't consider the consequences." I felt a mix of emotions churn inside me. Part of me wanted to hear her out to understand her perspective, but another part of me was still angry. "Sarah, it's hard to hear you say that when you've caused so much pain. I trusted you completely." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I threw everything away. Jack was a mistake and I thought I could convince myself it was just a phase. But I see now that I was lying to myself and to you. I realize how much I've lost." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I saw the remorse in her eyes. It was a fleeting glimpse of the woman I once loved, but the hurt still felt fresh. "I appreciate your apology, but it doesn't change what happened, Sarah. I've spent weeks trying to heal and find myself again. I can't be the person you want right now." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me one day." As I sat there, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about closure. I realized that I had already begun the path to forgiveness, not for her sake, but for my own. I didn't want to carry the burden of anger or resentment with me any longer. "I can't promise anything, but I appreciate you being honest with me," I said, taking a deep breath. "I need to focus on myself right now." The conversation drifted into more awkward territory, but I knew I had made the right choice. I wasn't going back to the life I had with Sarah, and I was okay with that. I left the coffee shop feeling lighter, as if a weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Back home, I reached for my phone and texted, "Mia, hey, wanna grab a smoothie tomorrow? I could use some company." I realized that I was stepping into a new chapter and I was eager to embrace it fully. I may have been broken, but I was also healing, and every step I took was leading me closer to the person I was meant to be. I was ready to move forward without the shadows of the past holding me back. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a sense of hope for the future. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the weeks rolled on, I felt increasingly stronger and more content with my life. I was hitting my fitness goals, nurturing new friendships, and, most importantly, learning to cherish my own company. Mia and I had grown closer, and she was becoming an integral part of my new routine. Her energy was infectious, and the way she encouraged me to push my limits was something I desperately needed. One weekend, we decided to take a weekend trip to a nearby hiking trail that was famous for its breathtaking views. As we drove out there, I felt a thrill of excitement. This was more than just a hike. It was a celebration of my newfound freedom and strength. I had come so far in such a short time, and I wanted to embrace every moment. We arrived at the trailhead early in the morning. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of pine and dew. As we began our ascent, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The trail was challenging, but with Mia by my side, I felt invincible. We chatted and laughed, and I relished the feeling of being fully present in that moment. Halfway up the trail, we stopped to take a break and enjoy the view. We sat on a rock, overlooking a valley that stretched for miles, the sun casting a golden hue on everything it touched. "This is amazing," I said, soaking it all in. "It really is," Mia replied, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Nature has a way of putting things into perspective." As we sat in the moment, I turned to her, feeling my heart race. "I just want to say how grateful I am for you. You've been a huge part of my healing process, and I really appreciate it." Her smile lit up her face. "I'm glad to hear that, but you did the hard work. You're the one who made the decision to change your life." We were silent for a moment, and something shifted in the air. There was a palpable tension, a spark that felt undeniable. "Mia, can we talk about us?" I asked, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. "Of course," she replied, her expression curious but open. "I know we've been spending a lot of time together, and I feel a connection with you. I want to explore that, but I also don't want to rush into anything. I'm still figuring things out after my marriage." "I feel the same way," she said, her eyes softening. "I think it's important to take it slow, especially after what you went through. But I also think there's something special here, and I'd like to see where it leads." Her words filled me with hope. It was refreshing to be with someone who understood the importance of taking things at a pace that felt right. As we sat there, overlooking the stunning landscape, I felt a sense of freedom. I wasn't defined by my past anymore. I was stepping into a future filled with possibility. As we continued our hike, the conversation flowed effortlessly. We shared stories about our lives, our dreams, and the things that made us who we were. I felt a renewed sense of excitement. This was the kind of connection I had longed for and had thought I might never find again. After reaching the summit, we took a moment to revel in our accomplishment. The view was breathtaking, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "This is what life is about," I mused, my heart swelling with joy. Mia turned to me, her expression serious but warm. "This is just the beginning for both of us, right? A fresh start." "Absolutely," I replied, feeling a sense of hope I hadn't experienced in a long time. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. Just a few days later, I received an unexpected text from Sarah. "Can we meet? I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I need to talk to you." My heart raced, a mix of emotions flooding through me. I had thought we were done with that chapter. I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to meet her. But part of me felt compelled to face her one last time, to bring closure to this chapter that had so deeply affected my life. We agreed to meet at a local park, a neutral ground where I could feel safe. As I approached the park bench where she was sitting, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was about to unfold. "Thanks for meeting me," she began, her voice shaky. I nodded, my expression neutral. "What did you want to talk about?" "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching since we last spoke," she said, looking down at her hands. "I realized how much I've hurt not only you but myself too. I've been going to therapy, trying to understand why I made the choices I did." I listened, my emotions a swirl of confusion and guardedness. "And I want to be honest with you," she continued, looking me in the eyes. "I still care about you. I know I messed up and I can't take that back, but I'm sorry for the pain I caused, and I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I hope one day you can forgive me." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a mixture of sympathy and anger. Sarah, I've spent weeks trying to heal. I can't just forget what happened. I can't go back to the way things were. I know, she said, tears brimming in her eyes. I just wanted you to know that I regret it deeply. I've hurt you and I've hurt myself. I'm trying to figure out how to move forward even if it's without you. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. I appreciate your honesty and I'm glad you're seeking help, but I've moved on. I've found strength in my journey and I don't want to look back anymore. Her face crumpled and for a moment I felt a flicker of compassion. I wish things could be different. Me too, I replied softly. But I can't be part of your healing. I need to focus on my own path. As we sat in silence, I realized this was the closure I needed. I felt empowered, knowing that I had taken control of my narrative. I wasn't the same person I was when I had first discovered her betrayal. I had grown, evolved, and learned to embrace my own strength. I stood up, offering a final nod. I wish you well, Sarah. I hope you find the peace you're looking for. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was ready to embrace the future, to nurture the connections I had forged, and to keep moving toward a life filled with possibilities. I was no longer defined by the pain of my past. I was stepping into a brighter future, ready to take on whatever came next. Back home, I texted Mia, letting her know I was ready to meet up again. I was grateful for her presence in my life, and I was excited to see where our journey would lead. The next chapter of my life was just beginning, and I was eager to embrace it with open arms. After my meeting with Sarah, I felt an unexpected sense of relief wash over me. It was as if I had finally closed a door that had been left ajar for far too long. I was ready to carry forward everything I had learned and to embrace the new connections in my life, especially with Mia. The following weekend, we decided to take another trip, this time to a nearby beach. It felt like a perfect way to celebrate not just the warmer weather but also the new beginnings we were both experiencing. We packed snacks, sunscreen, and our swimsuits, excited for a day of sun and fun. As we drove along the coast, the conversation flowed effortlessly. We laughed at inside jokes, talked about our aspirations, and shared our dreams. Mia had this lightness about her, a zest for life that was contagious. It reminded me of the joy I had buried beneath the weight of my past. When we arrived at the beach, I was immediately struck by the beauty of the ocean stretching out before us. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore and the salty breeze filled me with a sense of freedom and possibility. We set up our spot on the sand, and I felt a thrill of excitement bubbling within me. After settling in, we took a dip in the water. The waves were refreshing and we splashed around like we were kids again. In that moment, I felt completely at ease, unburdened by the past and filled with hope for what lay ahead. I looked over at Mia and our eyes met. There was a spark, a connection that was undeniable. Later, as we dried off on the beach, we sat close together and I found myself wanting to take a leap of faith. Mia, I began, my voice steady but my heart racing. I really enjoy spending time with you. I feel a connection that's different from anything I've felt in a long time. I'd like to explore this further if you're open to it. She turned to face me, her eyes shining with warmth. I've been hoping you'd say that. I feel the same way. I'm excited to see where this could go. With that, the tension melted away and I felt a surge of hope. We spent the rest of the day enjoying each other's company, taking walks along the shore, and talking about everything from our favorite movies to our childhood memories. The connection we shared grew stronger, and it felt like the start of something beautiful. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, I knew this was a moment I would cherish forever. I felt grateful to be moving forward with someone who encouraged me to be my best self. With Mia, I felt hope for a future filled with love, laughter, and adventure. But it wasn't just about moving on with Mia. It was about embracing the lessons I had learned through my experiences. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, the pain, the betrayal, and ultimately the strength I had discovered within myself. Over the following weeks, we continued to explore our relationship, taking things at a pace that felt comfortable for both of us. I learned to open my heart again slowly but surely, and I relished the moments we shared, whether it was cooking dinner together, going for hikes, or simply enjoying quiet evenings watching movies. However, I remained mindful of my own boundaries and the importance of communication. I knew that the wounds from my past were a part of me, but they didn't define who I was. With Mia, I felt a sense of partnership that I had longed for. We supported each other's goals, and our connection deepened with every shared experience. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I turned to her and said, "You know, I really didn't think I could open myself up again after everything that happened. But you've shown me that it's possible. Thank you for being so patient with me." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I'm just glad you're allowing yourself to embrace this new chapter. You deserve all the happiness in the world." As time went on, I started to feel whole again. I had built a life filled with love, friendship, and purpose. I realized that while Sarah's betrayal had hurt me deeply, it had also been a catalyst for growth. It taught me the importance of self-love and resilience. I began to reflect on how far I had come, and it filled me with gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been transformative. I had learned to prioritize my well-being, to nurture the relationships that mattered, and to find joy in the little things. As we stood at the beach, watching the waves crash and the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a deep sense of peace. I was grateful for the path that had led me here, for the lessons learned, and for the love I had found again. Life was unpredictable, and I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I also knew I had the strength to face them. I had embraced my past and was ready to move forward with hope and love. In that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. I would continue to grow, to learn, and to embrace every opportunity that came my way. I was ready for whatever the future held, and I was determined to create a life filled with happiness and fulfillment. As I looked over at Mia, her smile lighting up the fading light of day, I felt a warmth swell in my chest. I was ready to live fully, to love deeply, and to embrace the beautiful, unpredictable journey of life.